The Cowgirl of Gold Creek. The dust kicked up by 100 hooves painted the setting sun in a fiery haze. Mei Lin, astride Pepper, a paint mare whose coat mirrored the fading light, moved with an effortless grace that belied the rugged chaos around her. Her lasso, a blur of practiced motion, snaked out and tightened around the hind leg of a stray steer, turning it back towards the main herd with a gentle tug. Pepper, sensing her rider's intent, danced sideways, keeping the rest of the cattle in line. No one in Gold Creek could work a herd like Mei Lin, a fact begrudgingly acknowledged by even the most seasoned ranchers. Later, the last of the cattle safely penned, Mei Lin rode into town, the scent of pine and sweat clinging to her worn leather chaps. She dismounted outside Abernathy's general store, the jingle of her spurs a familiar rhythm against the boardwalk. Inside, the usual collection of dry goods and hardware filled the air with a mix of spice and metal. "Afternoon, Mr. Abernathy," Mei Lin offered, her voice clear and even. The shopkeeper, a man whose face was etched with years of Gold Creek sun, grunted in response, his gaze sweeping over her, lingering a moment too long on her braided hair before settling on the counter. He didn't offer the usual pleasantries, nor did he meet her eyes. Just a quick, dismissive nod as he measured out the flowers she requested. The subtle chill was a familiar sensation, a thin, invisible barrier that had long separated her from some of the townsfolk. Mei Lin, used to it, simply paid for her goods, the coins clinking sharply as she laid them on the worn wood. She knew she was good at what she did, and that, for now, had to be enough. A ribbon and a blame. Dust still hung heavy in the air, thick as a shroud, when Sheriff Jeb and his deputies arrived. The stagecoach lay on its side, splintered wood and torn leather spilling its contents across the rocky trail. One wheel was missing, its spokes shattered. 2 guards, pale and unmoving, lay sprawled near the wreckage, their pistols still clutched in lifeless hands. The air thrummed with the buzz of flies and the distant, mournful whinny of a loose horse. A strongbox, its lid ripped open, lay empty beside a scattering of personal effects, a travel book, a child's wooden doll, a spilled bag of dried fruit. Jeb knelt, his boot crunching on loose gravel, examining a dark stain seeping into the earth. His gaze swept the scene, sharp and practiced, searching for any clue. He moved towards the overturned coach door, pushing aside a torn curtain. That's when his eyes caught it, snagged on a flash of color against the dull, splintered wood. A small, silken red ribbon, vibrant as a fresh poppy, was tangled around a loose nail. He plucked it free, the soft fabric a stark contrast to the grim scene. His jaw tightened. This wasn't just any ribbon. It was the same distinctive shade Mei Lin always wore, tied in her braid, or sometimes, around the neck of her horse. A cold certainty settled in his gut, hardening his expression. "Mei Lin," he muttered, his voice gravelly. It was Mei Lin. He stood, the ribbon clutched in his fist, his eyes already narrowed with conviction. The chaos of the ambush faded, replaced by the singular, burning blame in his mind. Jailhouse blues. The clang of the jail cell door echoed through the small, musty room, a stark punctuation mark to Mei Lin's new reality. Sheriff Jeb, his face etched with a mix of regret and duty, had been unyielding. "Mei Lin, I'm sorry, but folks are saying you were involved in that ambush. I gotta bring you in." Her protests had been met with hushed whispers and averted gazes from the townsfolk who had gathered. "But I didn't do anything," she'd cried, her voice cracking with disbelief. "I was nowhere near there." But the fear in their eyes was palpable, a chilling transformation from their usual wary curiosity. The idea of a lone Chinese woman, strong and independent, now seemed to twist into something sinister in their minds. Now, the rough-hewn bench beneath her offered little comfort. A single, grimy window, high on the wall, offered a sliver of the outside world. Through it, she could just make out the dusty main street, the very path she had walked with her head held high, now seemingly miles away. The setting sun painted the distant mesas in hues of orange and purple, a beauty she couldn't appreciate. A knot tightened in her stomach, not just from hunger, but from a profound sense of isolation. She was truly alone, a stranger in a land that suddenly felt hostile, accused of a crime she didn't commit. Her usual stubborn resolve felt fragile, battered by the weight of their accusations. The air, thick with the scent of old wood and something vaguely metallic, pressed in on her, a physical manifestation of her helplessness. The lone cowboy arrives. The dry wind, smelling of sagebrush and distant dust, whipped Silas's hat brim as his horse, a stoic roan, ambled into Gold Creek. The town wasn't much, a handful of false-fronted buildings, a saloon whose piano was already out of tune at this hour, and a general store that looked like it had seen better decades. An unusual stillness hung in the air, a tension that wasn't quite fear, but something close to it, like a held breath. People moved with an almost deliberate slowness, their gazes quick to dart away when he met them. He reined in near the watering trough, the creak of the saddle the loudest sound for a moment. As he dismounted, leading his horse to drink, a snatch of hushed conversation drifted from the saloon's open doors. Chinese girl, Mei Lin, they say. Tried to ambush the stagecoach. Nonsense. She wouldn't hurt a fly. Well, Sheriff Miller seems to think so. Got her locked up, awaiting trial. Silas's brow furrowed slightly. He'd heard whispers of prejudice, but an ambush seemed a far cry from the quiet resilience he'd observed in the few Chinese settlers he'd encountered. The details were sparse, but the implication was clear, a swift judgment, likely without much consideration for the truth. He watched a group of men by the livery stable, their faces grim, their words low. Something about this felt wrong, a sour note in the otherwise ordinary hum of a frontier town. Gold Creek had a story to tell, and Silas had a feeling he'd just ridden into the middle of it. Clues in the dust. The sun, a searing brand in the azure sky, beat down on the ambush site. Silas dismounted, the soft thud of his boots on the parched earth the only sound besides the distant cry of a hawk. He surveyed the scene, a grim tableau of shattered wood and upturned dirt. The stagecoach lay on its side, a broken toy, and the earth around it was scuffed and churned. Silas dropped to one knee, his gaze sweeping across the ground with an almost surgical precision. He noted the deep gouges where the coach had skidded, the scattered fragments of splintered wood, and then, the footprints. His brow furrowed. There were the distinct, delicate impressions of Mei Lin's small boots, unmistakable from their time at the ranch. But interwoven with them, and far more numerous, were the heavier, more aggressive prints of at least two other men, their boots significantly larger and with a different tread pattern. Mei Lin's tracks were hurried, chaotic, as if she'd been caught in a whirlwind, while the others were purposeful, predatory. Then he saw it. A scrap of crimson ribbon, snagged on a thorny bush, fluttered gently in the breeze. He carefully detached it, his fingers tracing the silk. The knot, a peculiar, intricate pattern, was one he recognized. It was a knot often used by river bandits, a method of securing goods that was notoriously difficult to untangle without specific knowledge. Mei Lin, a rancher's daughter, would have no reason to know such a specialized knot. A cold certainty settled in Silas's gut. This wasn't her work. The rattler's mark. Silas found the stagecoach driver hunched over a mug of lukewarm coffee, his face a roadmap of exhaustion and dust. "Morning," Silas offered, his voice a low rumble. "Mind telling me what you saw out there?" The driver, a burly man named Jebediah, grunted, stirring the dregs of his coffee. "Just a blur, mostly. Dust and gunfire. Heard a woman scream, then nothing but the wind whistling through the empty coach." He shivered, despite the morning warmth. "Couldn't get a good look at the bandits, too fast. But I tell you, those horses moved like hellfire." Silas nodded, his gaze sweeping the ground around the abandoned stage. He circled the perimeter slowly, his eyes scanning for anything amiss. The churned earth told a chaotic tale of struggle, but it was a distinct pattern, half hidden beneath a clump of sagebrush, that snagged his attention. A horseshoe print, unlike any he'd seen before. The metal had been scored with 3 parallel grooves, a deliberate, almost decorative mark. He knelt, tracing the impression with a calloused finger. A cold certainty settled in his gut. The desert rattlers. Their signature was as unique as it was brutal. They always marked their horses, a twisted pride in their infamy. This wasn't just any ambush, it was the work of a known gang, a gang with a reputation for mercilessness and a hideout rumored to be deep in the Red Rock Canyons. This changed everything. He knew where to start looking. Showdown at Rusty Canyon. The sun, a fiery orb, blazed down on Rusty Canyon, painting the ancient rock formations in shades of burnt sienna and rust. Silas, a phantom amongst the sparse scrub, surveyed the desert rattlers. Below, in the dusty basin, 6 figures bickered over a glittering hoard of coins and jewel-encrusted trinkets. Their boisterous shouts reverberated off the canyon walls, a stark counterpoint to Silas's focused stillness. He noted their ringleader, a hulking brute with a deeply scarred cheek, whose bluster was punctuated by a flash of crimson at his waist. Silas began his descent, a mere whisper of movement in the heavy air. He materialized from behind a wind-carved boulder, his sudden presence a jarring quiet amidst their raucous celebration. "Gentlemen," he stated, his voice calm yet imbued with a steely edge that sliced through their revelry. "Looks like you've stumbled into some trouble." The rattlers froze, their hands instinctively dropping to their holsters. The leader snarled, "Who in the blazes are you?" "The one who's come for what you stole," Silas replied, his gaze locked on the scarlet ribbon peeking from the leader's belt. The leader drew, but Silas moved with breathtaking speed, a blur of motion. A swift kick sent the man sprawling, his pistol skittering across the dust. The others charged, a chaotic torrent of curses and flailing limbs. Silas moved with an almost fluid grace, ducking under a wild swing, delivering a precise jab that sent another rattler staggering. He disarmed a third with a flick of his wrist, the sharp clang of metal against stone echoing. The skirmish was brief, brutal, and concluded almost before it truly began. With the gang subdued, groaning among the scattered loot, Silas knelt beside their leader. He unclipped the small, crimson silk ribbon from the man's belt buckle. It was an exact match for the one discovered at the ambush site, the very ribbon that had unfairly implicated Shao. Silas tucked it carefully away, a silent pledge to the woman awaiting his return. Justice, it seemed, was finally within reach. Justice served. Dust plumed around Silas's horse as he led the rattlers into Gold Creek. The sun, already dipping, cast long, distorted shadows of the tied-up outlaws. A hush fell over the few townsfolk gathered outside the saloon, quickly replaced by murmurs of disbelief. Silas dismounted, his gaze unwavering as he met Sheriff Jebb's startled eyes. "These men," Silas announced, his voice carrying clearly, "are the ones you're looking for. And this," he added, producing a pouch heavy with stolen gold and the distinctive Rattler brand, "is their loot." Jebb's face, usually ruddy, went pale. He stared at the evidence, then at the notorious rattlers, their faces grim and defeated. A key jangled as he unlocked the jail cell. Mei Lin stood framed in the doorway, blinking in the dimming light. Jebb cleared his throat, his gaze avoiding hers. "Mei Lin," he mumbled, his voice uncharacteristically soft, I made a mistake. You're free." A collective gasp swept through the onlookers. Then, a single, tentative cheer erupted, quickly swelling into a chorus of shouts and applause. "Mei Lin! Mei Lin!" they chanted, their earlier suspicion replaced by admiration. Silas offered her a small, knowing smile. She met his gaze, a quiet strength radiating from her, and for the first time in days, the weight lifted from her shoulders. Justice, it seemed, had a way of finding its mark. A new beginning. The campfire crackled, throwing dancing shadows across their faces. Silas watched Mei Lin, her profile illuminated by the flickering light, a silent strength emanating from her. "I'm staying," he finally said, his voice a low rumble against the night's quiet. Mei Lin's head snapped up, her eyes, dark and expressive, searching his. You don't have to. The trail is open. I know. He met her gaze steadily. But I choose to. There's something here, Mei Lin. Something worth building. He didn't mention the quiet admiration that had taken root, the way her fierce independence and quiet kindness had captivated him. A slow smile spread across her face, lighting up her features. Then we build. The following weeks blurred into a rhythm of sweat and satisfaction. They cleared land, the ring of axes echoing through the small valley. Silas, with his quiet strength, felled trees, while Mei Lin, surprisingly adept with a hammer, helped construct the sturdy fences that would pen their future livestock. Her hands, usually skilled with a rifle, proved equally capable with a shovel, digging post holes with determined efficiency. Evenings brought a peaceful exhaustion. They'd sit on the porch of their modest cabin, the scent of pine and fresh earth mingling with the aroma of Mei Lin's simple, delicious cooking. One twilight, as the last sliver of sun dipped below the rugged peaks, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Silas watched a lone hawk circle overhead. Mei Lin leaned against the porch post, a contented sigh escaping her lips. "It's good," she murmured, her voice soft. This is good." Silas nodded, a rare, genuine smile touching his lips. The vast, untamed land around them no longer felt solitary, but full of promise, a new beginning forged not in ambition, but in quiet trust and shared labor.